Lesson 130. Well, in this lesson, we're going to talk about a small difference between English and Spanish. In English, there's just one way to say I am, and that is I am. Verbs like that are what we call verbs of being or verbs of existing, also known as linking verbs, as you can see here on our page. But in Spanish, there are two ways to say I am. Antonio, can you tell us a little bit about these two different ways to say verbs of being, to say things like I am, you are, he is, we are? These linking verbs or these verbs of existing, you have two sets of them in Spanish. Tell us the difference between these two sets of verbs of being or linking verbs.
Well, Bill, in Spanish, when we say permanent things like he is my father, as we see in our example here, he is my father, that's a permanent thing. Or the mountain is large, that's just happens to be a permanent fact. But in Spanish, if you want to say a temporary fact or example, we say it a little bit different. So in English, you always say I am. He is my father, or I am in the kitchen. He is my father is a permanent thing. I am in the kitchen is a temporary thing. So you just say the same thing. I am this, I am that.
Because there's only one way to say it. There's no alternate way to express that.
That's correct, Bill. But in Spanish, we have two different ways of expressing a permanent fact or a permanent statement and a temporary statement.
So, Antonio, when you say a temporary thing, what you mean is things like in these examples here, I am in the kitchen or he is tired. Those are just temporary situations because if you are in the kitchen, that's like a location. You could easily walk to a different room. Or if you're tired, you're not always going to be tired. You could be energetic later. So these are temporary types of things, right? As opposed to the permanent things we talked about before. So if you had a Spanish sentence that was going to say, I am in the kitchen, you would not say, yo soy in the kitchen. You would use a different verb, right?
So it's very important that you English speakers get used to this new concept because it doesn't exist in English. So,
right, it's totally unfamiliar to an English speaker.
Yes.